Trade reports are continuing to escalate for the Toronto Maple Leafs as multiple reporters have linked the Leafs to a few different players, specifically some goaltenders that could be very interesting going forward. And we also have a couple of mock trades that insiders have proposed. We're going to break all those things down as well as discuss the most latest reports on this. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. Before we do, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're very close to 10,000 subscribers, and if you want to help us achieve that goal, your guys' support yesterday was crazy. I think we're at 9,200. If you're a part of that 80% who aren't subscribed and want to help us towards that goal, make sure to hit that button. And Darius, thank you to you guys watching for your support. It's been great, but there's a lot to discuss today. There's a lot of reports going around, and there's some mock trades as well we're going to discuss. But let's start with let's just start with this, because obviously Mitch Marner has been on the trade block in theory now since the season ended, and reports are starting to escalate regarding that. And more reporters are saying that they think, and Chris Johnson in yesterday's video kind of hinted at the fact that one of the core four members is going to be gone, most likely Mitch Marner. And then some of these articles have dropped in different proposals, and we're going to start with this here, which is kind of the most latest report. It says, I have a hard time believing Tavares will waive his no movement clause, but I'm not convinced that is the same case for Marner. Speaking with those close to his camp, the belief is he would and should consider alternative options if the Leafs seek a trade. Talks about how Nashville is a suitor for Marner and Saros could be in the deal, and that is exactly what David Pagnotta does. He brought up UC Saros for Marner, which is one of the better ideas. Obviously, goalies lower value. Really feel like a Saros and 2 firsts for Marner could work. So let's start with that. We also have some other trades, but according to David Pagnotta, Marner, which is pretty big news, would be willing to waive his no-move clause. And if that's the case, it seems like UC Saros or some sort of goaltender, kind of like what we covered in yesterday's video. That was more free agency signings, but like Bressois things. Seems like they're going to be targeting a goalie, the Maple Leafs are.
Yeah, and a lot of what's been lost in all of this is, yes, the Leafs are looking to move on from Mitch Marner, or it seems that way. All the reports coming out seem like they want to move on from at least one, and all fingers point to Mitch Marner. But what is all lost in this is, what about Mitch Marner? What if he wants to move on too? What if he needs a change of scenery? So I wonder if he's open to waiving his no movement clause, and we're kind of getting to that point where there are some reports coming out that say him and his camp might think it's a good idea. But anyway, besides that, Saros would be a good pickup. I think the Leafs need a goalie, and if they were to trade Mitch Marner, getting a goalie in return, like a bona fide starter, would be a great move. Obviously, you're going to get other pieces in there, and we talked about even maybe Calgary. Again, he would have to waive his no trade clause to go to Calgary or Nashville, but we'll talk about Calgary in a second too. Yeah. But Saros would be a great option. Even Askarov, who's another great goalie in the Nashville system. You might have to wait for him, just kind of like a Dennis Hildeby thing, but you might have 2 really, really good goalies in a year or 2 time. So that would be a great option as well. But Saros isn't a bad option either. UC Saros has been a great goalie for Nashville for a long time, a bunch of years now. So if they were to make that flip, I think that'd be great. And you can get a lot out of Nashville too, another great forward that's not, heavily priced out. So I think that'd be a good option as well. So everyone's got to look for, Mitch Marner might be willing to move his no trade clause at this point.
Yeah, and he obviously said that he wants to stay in Toronto in theory, or that he would be open to an extension there at the end of the year. But with these new reports, it seems like that maybe he wants to stay. Who really knows? But as long as he's willing to waive his no move clause, that's what's important for the Maple Leafs, because ultimately, if he isn't, it makes things a lot harder, and then you have to start juggling some other things, which is why we looked into some of the free agent goalies. And goaltending is this thing that Brad Treliving brought up. He kind of called out Joseph Woll to a degree about his injury history, and they don't have a 1A goalie right now. I mean, in theory, it's Joseph Woll. They're not going to bring back Ilya Samsonov, and Hildeby is at least a year away from being, maybe probably 2 years away from being ready to slot into an NHL 1A spot. So if you get a trade like UC Saros, you also are going to want to get a first-round pick, I would assume. In this one, he has a potential 2 first-round picks, David Pagnotta. But it's very interesting. And you look at this, and this is from another reporter saying the Leafs likely to explore the trade market for goaltending. UC Saros, Logan Thompson, Aiden Hill, and Jacob Markstrom. And we'll cover this more in depth and some of these other guys in future videos. But it just seems like UC Saros' name keeps getting brought up. And obviously, we discussed it on the live stream. I'll ask you, Darius, are you fine with, or what at the minimum amount of picks that you would want to come with UC Saros? Because at first we were talking about a Marner for Saros swap, but I think Marner might have a little bit more value than that. But if you're getting 2 firsts, I think I would do that trade just to switch things up in general for the Leafs, because they need to make a change.
Yeah, and well, Nashville has a lot of good prospects too, so it's not only about the picks. Obviously, you have to get a first-round pick back. Like Mitch Marner is worth a lot more than Leaf fans think he is right now. He is on the open market. He would be. He's going to make probably $12 million or north of that if he was playing for a different team. Another team would want this player. All right. I know recency bias. He wasn't good in the playoffs and all that, but another team would want this player. And Nashville has a lot of really good prospects too. So obviously you want a first round pick. If you can get Saros out of there, that would be great as well. They have Dante Fabro. If you can just make a trade, it doesn't just have to be Mitch Marner either, right? You can sweeten the pot with something. But I think there's a lot there in Nashville that does make sense for the Leafs. I also saw Logan Thompson on that list. That could be really interesting too. Vegas Golden Knights goaltender who's been really good this year and last year. And then of course Jacob Markstrom from the Flames too. I mentioned on a stream we had that, you know, acquiring Jacob Markstrom because he is really good could be another great stopgap option until you reach Dennis Hill to be in a year or two's time. And then maybe you get Rasmus Anderson, who's a right shot defenseman, a puck moving defenseman, a little bit more offensively minded, which the Leafs need now. It's funny how that's turned on its head over the last 2 years. I think there's a lot of really good options, but again, the ball is in Mitch Marner's court. He controls his destiny if he waives his no movement clause. So a lot of great options. He's worth a lot more than Leaf fans are giving credit right now.
Yeah, especially if he's willing to move his no move clause or waive his no move clause for a lot of teams. Obviously, if it's only one or two, they have to bid against each other, so it might be slightly less. But Darius, let us know in the comments, everyone watching, which of these three goalies, or four, I guess, I'm not really including Aiden Hill, but maybe out of these four, which you would want the Leafs to get the most. But before we do wrap up, we have another quick trade proposal I want to just throw out there. And there's going to be a lot of these over the next few months because I don't think they trade Mitch Marner necessarily right away. It'll probably, they'll get their new coach, which I'm assuming is going to happen sometime this week. It's looking like that's maybe next week, but that seems pretty imminent there. But Darius, this one is interesting. Would you pull the trigger on this trade, which is Mitch Marner for Seth Jones, Nick Foligno, and a first-round pick?
No disrespect, but whoever came up with this trade, this is an NHL 24 trade. This would never happen. The Leafs traded for Nick Foligno one time before. It didn't work out. He's not worth that much. Mitch Marner is worth way more than that because he would only free up like $2 million of salary if you took Seth Jones in. He's not a number one defenseman. He does shoot right. He's a decent defenseman, right? And he is playing on a bad team in Chicago, but Seth Jones is not a number one defense. Like, he wouldn't move the needle for the Leafs, and that just simply isn't enough return for the Leafs. Even if it was this year's first, it's just not enough for the Leafs. So I don't see that happening at all. It could happen. You could see Mitch Marner for Seth Jones, but the return would have to be a lot more than just that.
Yeah, and that's, you can see what Banksy said. He says, we'll listen to Jones plus from Marner, but have zero interest in Foligno and a late as the plus. And it's just an interesting fit. And Chicago probably isn't the most likely destination. I mean, Seth Jones does make sense in theory, but I don't know. It could be interesting. And that's what a lot of it's going to be now, is these trade proposals, because ultimately, until we have a more concrete, again, until the coach gets hired, they're not going to do a lot of reports coming out regarding Mitch Marner. But once the coach gets hired, it seems like things are going to escalate very quickly. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on all of this. What package do you prefer, this one or the one of Saros and 2 firsts for Mitch Marner? I have a feeling that we know what the answer to that is. But thank you guys. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're very close to 10,000, and we'll see you soon.